If you've seen someone online who knows what AI vocal synths are but has said, some Vocaloids use AI, but it's not generative AI, then send them this video. If someone sent you this video, hi, my name is Joey, and this is my short-form informational series on Vocaloid and the vocal synth scene. It'll only take a moment of your time, I promise. As some background, in the rise of products and services that have AI slapped onto their branding, it's become prominent in our discussions of moral consumption. Though, of course, we've had AI for the longest time, and the reason for that is because AI is a non-specific blanket term for multiple forms of technology that bear little relation to one another. So what's different now? Well, the usual suspects of controversial AI usage: image, video, and music generators, language models, anything that has the ability to independently produce content by referring to patterns in a dataset is referred to with the term generative AI. It can be inferred from context that modern discussions of AI are explicitly referring to generative tools, and that's handy because it means that in discussions of AI ethics, generative AI has become a comfortable terminology for unethical usage. But the issue is that, just like AI before it, generative AI is also a non-specific umbrella term that encompasses so much and removes vital details from the conversation, and there's no better case study than commercial vocal synthesis tools such as Vocaloid and Synthesizer V. So, some vocal synths sample raw audio and some are trained AI models. You can watch my other videos if you want more details on that, and the common argument is that AI vocal synths don't constitute generative AI because most editors have a manual interface where you still have to specify the majority of the parameters yourself, including the notation of what song your vocal is going to sing. But the problem is that generative AI is not defined in any way by the amount of effort or intervention by the user. The line between art that someone did or did not make is not a determining factor of generative technology. It is simply, does an AI generate the output by referring to patterns in a dataset? And even if AI banks are tasked with following a bunch of pitch curves and parameters specified by the user, from a functional standpoint, this interface is no different than the text prompt that goes into an AI art generator, and there are many details in the vocals that the AI is producing on its own to assist in your process. Which in turn means that assistive AI is not a viable term either, because some instances of assistive AI are also generative at the same time. The output's custom made with the user in mind, so it doesn't carry the same ethical connotations, but it's still generative tech fundamentally. So why does this correction matter? Objective definition is one thing, but that doesn't mean anything if no one's using it that way, and generative AI as a term has been able to mutate colloquially as more and more people discuss ethical usage. Well, fortunately, we have plenty of anecdotes to flesh this premise out. Rhythm game Taiko no Tatsujin Rhythm Festival, as per Steam policy, has an AI-generated content disclosure, the disclosure in question being that a selection of its songs use vocal synthesizers. In other words, the game was required to disclose AI usage because it has Kafu in its setlist. In other news, in the wake of AI becoming more prominent in music production, the Recording Academy has been spending the past few days workshopping its AI restrictions for Grammy submissions, and in some ways they do have to approve some instances of generative AI because the technology's generative classification does not necessarily violate their rule on human authorship. And this was because, in previous years when they experimented with a blanket ban on all AI usage, it meant that some submissions, such as submissions using vocal synthesis, would not be allowed. If the outcome of either of these two scenarios feels ill-informed or unfair to you, that means you advocate for the classification of ethical generative AI, and it can even be argued that you do so if your entry point to this discussion has been the idea that vocal synthesis is divorced from the generative classifier somehow. But it simply isn't, and that's because generative AI is not a sophisticated enough term that can satisfy a legislative movement, and there'll probably never be a good singular term that can accomplish all of that. Which is why, in order to be critical of what you deem to be unethical AI usage, the key isn't to find a singular bubble that encompasses everything, but to instead assess individual characteristics and qualifiers, be it consent, environmental cost, impact on the job market, or even what it means in the philosophy of art, as difficult as that would be to enforce. But if you're a fan of vocal synthesis, and especially if you're a fan of AI vocal synthesis, it's vital that we think bigger and dig deeper if we don't want to get caught in the crossfire.